What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Well, it's 3:28 Central Time. Packers game against the Atlanta Falcons just wrapped up, so I'm here to discuss my instant takeaways. You can also find this in article version over at Packers Wire. But first, before we dive in, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. As I mentioned, you can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So let's dive in, and we'll start with, well, we knew there were going to be games like this season. Games where it feels like the Packers are in control for much of the game, but cannot take advantage of opportunities in the fourth quarter, just pick up that additional, first down or two, or make that big play to help close the game out. Unfortunately, that's part of the learning curve. I think Brian Gutekunst and both Matt LaFleur have talked about this offseason, how with such a young unit, this group has to learn how to win football games. And we can look back to Aaron Rodgers' first season as a starter back in 2008, when that team went 6-10. There were a number of one-score games that they just could not win. And again, that's a part of the development, not just for Love, but for a young offense that this Packers have. And of course, they were without some star players on that side of the ball as well. David Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, and Christian Watson were all out. So unfortunately, coming into this season, we knew that there were probably going to be games like this. And I hate to break it to you, but there are probably going to be others like this as the season goes on. But just a tough loss. Packers controlled the game for 3 quarters, but the Atlanta Falcons absolutely dominated the fourth quarter. As I mentioned, David Bakhtiari did not play. So in his spot over at left tackle was Rasheed Walker. Very up and down start for him. Had an early penalty. There was a third down blitz pickup that, again, on the initial viewing, looked like was Walker's that was missed, but I do think he settled in well. And the offensive line, from a pass protection standpoint, once they got a few drives into the game, seemed to settle in as well. The Atlanta defense, again, they're aggressive. They threw some blitzes at this unit, but especially in that second, third quarter where the Packers offense was in its groove, I felt that they did all right in pass protection. However, the issue on the ground, and that was one of the big things coming out of the Bears game. The offense put up 31 points last week. Even this week, they put up 24, but their inability to find consistency on the ground is a major issue, and that is one of the big reasons that they lost this game. Again, those toss plays, those outside zone plays, those are just not working this season. Too many defenders are just flying into the backfield. And like Matt LaFleur said, that starts with the offensive line, but all 11 blockers, the tight ends, the receivers, especially on those toss plays that are going out to the boundary, they all have to be on the same page, and that just has not been working. They're just not consistent. Running lanes open up. A.J. Dillon, he's not someone who can create like Aaron Jones does. So if the running lanes aren't there, he's going to struggle to pick up, any sort of chunk yardage. But even when there is a little bit of daylight, he doesn't seem like he's taken full advantage of those opportunities. So that lack of a run game, puts the offense behind the sticks, puts them in predictable passing situations. Everything from that seems to become disjointed, especially with an offense like Matt LaFleur's, where the pass game builds off of the run game. Like that run game success, not just because you have a young quarterback or a young group of pass catchers, but it's important from a play calling perspective. We often hear when this offense is having multiple 3-and-outs, how it's difficult to get into a groove from a play calling standpoint. And again, that those issues on the ground, that inability to pick up yards is a contributor for it. And, it takes away their effectiveness off play action. It doesn't open up the same opportunities in the passing game. So there's just an absolute negative trickle down effect to everything else within this Packers offense when that run game is not performing. In addition to not having David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins left in the second quarter. There was a third down run when the Packers were in the red zone by A.J. Dillon, and you could see on the play that it looked like Elton Jenkins was a little shaken up. He was a little slow to get up. He did finish out that scoring drive before not coming back. The team said that it was a knee injury, and like I just mentioned, he did not return. So something to keep our eyes on this week. In his place, Royce Newman stepped in for him, and the Packers offensive line depth, I know I just got through talking about how they didn't perform well in run blocking, which is true, but to not have your star left guard, to not have your star left tackle, to be able to have the depth that they have to be able to step in and still compete in a game, not just be totally, blown off the ball. And like I said, I thought that this group was able to hold their own in pass protection. Just goes to show that the depth that the Packers have, and that is not something that's common as you look around the NFL at other NFL teams. For 3 quarters, really, I thought it was a sound performance from Jordan Love. He took care of the football. He was accurate for the most part. He took advantage of what was available to him, whether it was players in open space or favorable one-on-one matchups. But like I said, he and this offense went very, very quiet in the fourth quarter. They looked discombobulated. Love had some inaccurate passes. And like I just got through talking about, I think the issues in the run game were a root cause towards the overall dysfunction that we saw from this Packers offense in the fourth quarter. Injuries to the offensive line, as we know about, just covered those. Offense did not have Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon. But I thought from a play calling perspective, Matt LaFleur had a really, really good day. He gave the Falcons, once again, just like he did with the Bears, a ton of different looks to deal with. He had the running and passing games playing off of each other during those second and third quarters when things were really playing well. He had a good mix of inside runs, outside zone runs, and in the passing game that led to some one-on-one opportunities that Love was able to take advantage of. That touchdown pass to Dontavian Wicks. Wicks came across in motion, went up and then across, and again was one-on-one over the middle. A bread and butter type of play for this Packers defense and what they want to accomplish. And then got to get pass catchers in space as well on Jaden Reed's second touchdown. You know, that was off of play action. The cornerback, you could see his eyes got caught looking into the backfield. That allowed Reed to get past him. And from that point, it was game over. It was easy pitch and catch for Jordan Love and Jaden Reed. So I thought overall, really nice day from Matt LaFleur. From a play calling perspective, again, ton of different looks, 6 offensive linemen on a few plays, 3 tight ends, cycling different players through. It's absolutely going to be a core element to this Packers offense. These are things that we're going to see weekly as a way to keep defenses off balance. But, and again, that's a really, really fun aspect of this, of what this team can provide this season. And again, help create some opportunities for Love and these young pass catchers that they were able to take advantage of. And like I mentioned earlier, however, when you're not finding success on the ground and you're in predictable passing situations, defenses aren't necessarily, or the defense isn't necessarily as concerned about your ability to pick up yards on the ground. That again has a negative effect on the rest of the offense, both from an ability to get open, passing game, a play calling standpoint for Matt LaFleur. So, run game, absolutely an area, as we've harped on here already, that the Packers have to clean up. The Falcons offense, you know, if you watched any of my videos this week, I talked about how against Carolina, they were run heavy and utilized a quick passing game often, but you could tell early on that they were trying to go in the other direction. You know, one of those things where, all right, here's where we put on film. Now we're going to counter and do something completely different, because it wasn't until a little bit before halftime that it felt like they really started to lean into Bijan Robinson getting the ball heavily. We also saw Desmond Ridder passing the ball more. I believe he had at least 18 pass attempts by halftime, and that's how many he had in the entire game against Carolina. We also saw him pushing the ball downfield a little bit too on some intermediate routes and even a few downfield passes, which again was not the case against Carolina. So you definitely felt like Arthur Smith and the Falcons were trying to counter from what they had put on tape week 1 to catch the Packers off guard. They found a little bit of success with it, but again, this offense took off when they started giving the ball to Bijan Robinson, who, as I transition to my next point here, someone we just absolutely need to talk about as advertised. Incredibly effective with the ball in his hands, his ability to make defenders miss, impact the game as a pass catcher, impact the game as a ball carrier as well. Like, he's the reason why, you know, the Falcons were able to make that late charge. The Packers just could not stop him. Everybody knew where the ball was probably going, especially in that fourth quarter in crunch time. And he just has an incredible ability to make plays. Also, speaking of playmaking, Drake London, he had 6 receptions for 67 yards. Kyle Pitts, tight end, had 2 for 15. This is coming off of a game where London had just 1 target against Carolina. And while I wouldn't say that he dominated the game by any means, that was Bijan Robinson's role. He came up with some plays and some big moments, had that touchdown in the red zone on what ended up being the game-winning scoring drive. He had a big play initially to get that drive off and running. And that's the challenge that this Falcons offense can present to teams. Of course, you want to focus in on Robinson, try to do your best to limit what he can do. But if you catch yourself doing that too much, well, you got two playmakers on the outside that can, make plays at all parts of the field, that can really stretch the field for some big play potential. And like I said, coming into the game, that was one of the balances, or the balance that Joe Barry had to strike, and how they manage those two aspects. And there were times where the Packers, I think, were sitting in that cover two look a little too much, and the Falcons definitely took advantage of that with the ground game with Bijan Robinson. But again, it's a tough matchup to have to try to manage, and we saw the Falcons absolutely take advantage of it. From a positive standpoint, Kenny Clark, he didn't fill the stat sheet with sacks by any means, but he dominated the Falcons' interior offensive line. Got some really, really good push against that group. I also want to mention Quay Walker. There were several Bijan Robinson runs that I think would have gone for a lot more if Quay Walker didn't end up in the middle of them making a tackle. So I thought those two had some impressive performances. Patrick Taylor, the Packers elevated him for the second week in a row. And again, when he's called up, he's primarily brought up to help on special teams. But you could see on a few occasions his value on offense as a blocker. On that Jordan Love run in the first half, the only reason that happened was because of a blitz pickup by Patrick Taylor. On Jane Reed's touchdown run, on the quick pop pass to him, Patrick Taylor was the lead blocker. So again, you could just see the value that he brings, and why all summer when Matt LaFleur is talking about what they look for at running back, blocking is such an important aspect of it. Additionally, from a penalties perspective, again, bit of an issue for the Packers. I believe they were called for 6 of them in this game. They also weren't nearly as effective on third downs as they were a week ago. If you recall, last week they converted 56% of their attempts, which is really, really good. However, today they were just 3 for 8. And again, go back to the run game. We are in predictable third and long situations. That's a tough way to live if you're going to plan on moving the chains consistently that way. In the red zone, they were 2 for 3 as well. So again, not bad by any means, but not the 3 for 3 that they were a week ago. And overall for this Packers offense, it was feast or famine. They ran just 46 offensive plays. They basically either put together a scoring drive or they went 3 and out. The Falcons, meanwhile, ran 78 plays. They controlled the game, in general from that perspective. They controlled the time of possession. And again, goes back to the ground game. You win in the trenches, you lose in the trenches. The Packers' inability to run the ball, the Falcons' ability to run the ball was, the difference maker in this game. The turnover battle, the Packers won it 1-0. Matt LaFleur often talks about how he wants to win it 2-0, but as we all know, just in general, winning the turnover battle is usually a good sign for your team. However, it very well should have been 3-0. There was a dropped interception from Jair Alexander that very well could have been a pick six. There was a dropped interception from Quay Walker that maybe wouldn't have been a pick six, but the Packers were going to begin with the ball in Falcons territory. And if those plays are made, this game could have had a different outcome. The Packers might have won it. Obviously, we don't want to play the if game. Who knows, especially with the struggles that the offense had of late, if they would have taken advantage of those opportunities. But if those plays are made, this game definitely could have had a different outcome. Anders Carlson, another perfect day, 3 for 3 on extra points, made his lone field goal attempt. There's a lot of ups and downs from him this summer, but he's had a really nice start to the season. And one thing I want to point out, on that first drive from the Packers, there was that delay of game penalty that bumped the field goal back to a 56-yarder, and the Packers chose to punt. I get early on, you're playing the field position game, but 56 yards indoors, distance isn't an issue for Carlson. He has the distance. Whether he would have made it or not, that's a different question. But, after seeing how this game ends, Packers lose by a point, hindsight, of course, as it always is, being 2020, is that a play that Matt LaFleur would like to have back and bring his kicker out there to see what he could do with that, that opening attempt? Because again, from a distance perspective, indoors, that should not have been an issue for Carlson whatsoever. So I guess something for us to speculate on moving forward. Lastly, and again, at least on the initial viewing, when Ritter did hold the ball, as he waited for longer developing routes to open up, I thought that he oftentimes had the time that he needed. It looked like against Carolina specifically that this Falcons offensive line and pass protection could have been susceptible. And again, that interior offensive line, like I said, Kenny Clark gave them a lot of fits, but for the most part, I thought Ritter was if that did occur, able to navigate it well, or did have the time that he needed. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my quick, instant takeaways from the Green Bay Packers performance against the Atlanta Falcons. And again, what was a heartbreaking loss. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel, and you can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.